that right, Bob Kipper? You stupid little whatever you are.
I'm a Snarkenfugel, thank you very much.
Whatever. You will never find Vince the Bullet Whaley.
Vince the Bullet Whaley. Vince the Bullet Whaley. Vince the Bullet Whaley! I'm back, baby! I'm gonna find Vince the Bullet Whaley!
What? How you break out of my spell?
Marvin! Help me, I'm down here! You mess with my friend? Nobody messes with my friend! Fly, Marvin! Headbutt! Fly! Marvin, I'm so glad you're back! Thank you for getting me out of that pit. I'm sorry I ever left you here. From now on, we're in this together, 100%. No hard feelings, Bob. You have a friend in me. Ha! You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road looks tough ahead. Yes, Marvin, thank you. And you have a friend in me too. You just don't have a future as a singer. Anyway, Marvin, I need to tell you about a special tip I got from a friend in America. He told me that Vince the Bullet Whaley actually is here in Cambodia, and that he loves to hang out in a place called Siem Reap, where the elephants live. I guess his favorite animal is the elephant. You gotta be kidding me. That's my favorite too. Let's go! Elephants? I love elephants. Brrr! Brrr! Ay, ay, ay. So what do you think this Vince the Bullet Whaley looks like? Word in the streets, he's a tough dude. Oh yeah, that's what I heard too. I bet he's gonna be intimidating. I'm kinda scared to interview him. Marvin, when did you start giggling like that? Wasn't me, bro. There it is again. Who is that?
It's just me. Sorry to interrupt. Did I hear you say the name Vince the Bullet Whaley?
Yes, we did. Do you know where we could find him?
Yes, I actually do. But why do you want to meet him?
Because if I don't, I'll lose my job. I'm a sports announcer, and I just have to get an interview with him before Con the Coyote does.
No worries. Follow me.
No way! That's Vince the Bullet's race car? You're not kidding. Thank you so much for bringing us here, little fella. Do you think Vince is here?
I'm sure he is. Let me go get him.
After all this time, finally, we're going to get to meet Vince the Bullet Whaley. I wonder if he'll let me interview him. Where's Vince? I knew it. It was too good to be true. He doesn't want to talk to us, does he?
I'll be glad to talk to you. My name is Vince. Vince the Bullet Whaley.
Well, good morning, boys and girls. I hope you are enjoying the adventures of Bob Kipper and Marvin. And what do you think about these characters, huh? What do you think about Chow King? Oh, goodness. I don't think Chow King is going to be with us anymore. I don't know. That Marvin really got him with that flying headbutt that Marvin did there. That was pretty awesome. Boys and girls, who's your favorite character? Who's your favorite character? Put it in the comment section. If you like Bob Kipper, do you like Marvin? Surely nobody out there likes Chow King. Or, my goodness, heaven forbid, Con Coyote. All right, what do you think? What do you think about, were you surprised at who Vince the Bullet Whaley ended up being? Maybe Vince the Bullet Whaley is your favorite character. I don't know. Put your favorite character in the comment section there. I hope that you're enjoying the adventures of Bob Kipper, and we're looking forward to another episode coming up sometime in the near future. Okay. Well, boys and girls, happy Sunday to you. Thank you for joining me this morning, and I want you to stand up, please. Go ahead and stand up. Stand up, and let's shake our arms out a little bit. Let's get the blood flowing. All right, Sunday morning here, and let's make sure we're alive, alert, awake, and enthusiastic this morning. Okay, and we're gonna start off by singing a new song that I don't think you've learned yet. Maybe some of you have learned it, but it's gonna be new for a lot of you. And it goes like this. You gotta get your hands ready to go. Okay, it goes like this. I've got so much to be thankful for. Okay, so let's try that one more time and see if you can get me on the timing, okay? Listen to it. Here it goes. It goes like this. I'll slow it down just a little bit. I've got so much to be thankful for. I've got Jesus to be thankful for. I've got Jesus to be thankful for. I've got so much to be thankful for. What's something that you're thankful for? Well, put it in the comment section there. Let's see if I can guess some of the things that you're thankful for. How about I've got my parents to be thankful for? Okay, let's try that one. I've got my parents to be thankful for. I've got my parents to be thankful for. I've got so much to be thankful for. How about, let's see, what's another one here? I've got my siblings, my brothers and sisters. Here we go. I've got my siblings to be thankful for. I've got my siblings to be thankful for. I've got so much to be thankful for. One more. I've got the Bible to be thankful for. I've got the Bible to be thankful for. I've got so much to be thankful for. All right, boys and girls, thank you for joining me in singing right there. And boys and girls, I'm excited to introduce to you today a great friend of mine, and actually this is the cartoon version of this guy. Who do you think it is? Did somebody guess it out there? That's right, Brother Sal. Brother Sal. And Brother Sal is going to bring us the lesson this morning. It's a very interesting lesson. It has something to do with a coin and a fish, okay? And you're not going to want to miss it, so pay attention as cartoon Brother Sal brings us our lesson, my favorite miracle for this week. All right? Pay attention.
Good morning, boys and girls. I hope you're all doing well this morning. I would like to share one of Jesus' miracles this morning with you, where Peter finds a coin in the fish's mouth. As Jesus and Peter arrived to Capernaum, many of you know Simon Peter from other miracles. Peter was a fisherman. That was his job in the Bible. He was a fisherman. So Peter is out fishing one day, and he's been out all day long trying to catch fish, and he caught no fish. So Jesus catches Peter as he's putting away his nets and tells Peter, "Go and cast thy nets." And Peter responds, "Jesus, we've been doing this all day and we caught nothing, but because you're asking me, I will obey." And when he did cast his nets, he caught so many fish that the ship began to sink. Another time, Peter was out on a ship, and they seen Jesus afar off in the mist, and they knew not that it was Jesus, and they began to be afraid. And Jesus made himself known and told Peter to come out and walk with him, to join him on sea. So as Jesus and Peter enter the temple, the people which are in charge of collecting tribute money, which means taxes for visiting the temple, come up to Peter and say, "Does not your master need to pay any tribute?" Peter responds, "Yes." So Jesus asks Peter and says, "What do you think? Do you think the king's children need to pay money to enter their own house, or do strangers?" Peter responds, "Strangers." Jesus answers, "So the children are free? Nevertheless, we might offend them. Go and cast a hook at sea and catch a fish. And when thou bringest him, open his mouth, and there will be a coin in the fish's mouth to pay both our taxes for entering the temple." So Peter obeys Jesus, and that's how Jesus provided for their needs that day.
Well, boys and girls, thank you for listening so well as Brother Sal taught that lesson about the coin in the fish's mouth. Man, what a interesting story out of the life of Jesus. And boys and girls, I'll tell you what, it teaches me just a couple of things here. Number one, it teaches me that Jesus, he knows everything. I mean, how in the world would anybody have ever known that in that water there was a fish that had a coin that could be used to pay that payment? And Jesus was just showing that he wasn't just another man. He wasn't just another teacher. He wasn't just another prophet. But that's something that only God would have known. Boys and girls, we don't even know how that coin got in that fish's mouth. Maybe it was miraculously placed in there by God himself, or maybe the fish just was feeding on the bottom and Jesus just happened to know exactly which fish it was. And then for Peter to be able to catch that one fish at Jesus' command is just another thing to show us, another evidence to show us that Jesus wasn't just any other person. He was God in the flesh, doing things and saying things that only God could do and could say. And boys and girls, another thing that I learned is that Jesus can use anything. He can use anything to provide for our needs. And boys and girls, Jesus wanted Peter to use that coin to pay those people. And certainly there are times in our life that we have a need, and in this story teaches us that Jesus, if he can use a fish to bring about a coin that Peter could use, well, boys and girls, God can use so many things, so many ways, and so many creative things that God can use to give us the things to supply our needs. And boys and girls, I hope that you are serving the Lord Jesus Christ. I hope that you're seeking the Lord Jesus Christ in your life every single day. I want to encourage you, don't wait for somebody to tell you to read your Bible. Don't wait for mom or dad or a Sunday school teacher, although I'm certainly glad that we have Sunday school teachers and parents that encourage you to read your Bible. But boys and girls, I want to encourage you, before anybody else even asks you to do that you would wake up in the morning and take that time to seek the Lord, to seek his will, and to know him, okay? Well, boys and girls, thank you so much for joining me again on this Sunday, okay? And I hope to see you next Sunday at 10 a.m., okay? God bless you.
This may be a different venue, but by my watch, it's time for
God's creation of the week.
So this week, I thought we'd give formerly Science Joe, now Producer Joe, an opportunity to bring us a creation for this week's episode of God's Creation of the Week. And I like surprises, so I'm going to be as surprised as you are as to what this creation is going to be. So I'm excited, and let's take a look and reveal what this creation is. So I'm going to reveal it, and you're going to see at home what it is going to be revealed as well. So let's go ahead, and a little bit of blue. Okay, a little bit of more blue here. How about here? There's blue, right, blue. Okay. Lots of blue. Okay, nothing else. Okay, really. All right, Joe, come here. What's up with this creation image?
Well, it's the sky.
Oh, okay, I can see that now. I mean,
Yeah.
and you actually have it upside down. Yeah, funny, Joe. Okay. All right, I think we can work with this, but how did you come up with this? What are we supposed to do with this? Well, I was at the Byron Art Gallery, and I'm like, whoa, look at the amazing coloring on this civet drawing that Jacob did. And I was like, whoa, that's like so amazing, so awesome, the choice of colors. And then I'm like, whoa, look at this octopus stinkhorn. I was like, whoa, man, why did Jace choose the color blue? And I'm like, oh, wait a second, that's the sky. And I'm like, wait a second, why is the sky blue? Yeah, that's very interesting, Joe. So here, like I said, we can work with this. Let's do this. Let's do this. This is a creation that God made on day number 2, and there's got to be a lot of interesting things that God did as a whole. He did, it took the whole day to make. One of the things He did was make the atmosphere. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's talk about it. And why don't you lead us off with a fact about this creation that people at home would find interesting. A fact? Okay. In the day it's blue, except at night when it's not, and you see all these little sparkles. Okay, that's a good start. Sure. Okay. Here. Let's do this. Why don't you give me all the facts, and then I'll take a look at them, and I'll prep myself, and then we can come back and tell the folks at home about it. Facts. Well, let's do this. I programmed a scientist in your phone. It's in your phone. How did you get into my phone? Well, I don't know. I just looked at it and then unlocked. I'm like, I don't know. It maybe thinks I look like you or something. I mean, just okay. So much for security, but fair enough. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's call a scientist. Siri, call a scientist.
Calling a scientist.
Good. It's ringing. Okay. All right.
Hello, this is a scientist speaking.
Oh, hey, this is Jason Homestead with First Baptist Church of Long Beach, and we're doing a show or episode of God's Creation of the Week, and I thought I'd ask to see if you had any, unique facts for the kids at home about the atmosphere of the sky. Anything that you think would be very interesting for them to know about?
The atmosphere is like my Uncle Bill. It's full of gas.
Joe, is this you? Oh man, I got you so good. Oh man, it's gonna be a long night looking up all this information. Here, I thought you could use a cup of coffee. Oh man, I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you so much. By the way, your civet coffee might be going bad if it has a funny smell to it. All right, after a long night of researching and discovering a bunch of interesting things about the atmosphere and then cleaning up, getting a haircut and a shave, Joe and I are ready to go with some interesting facts that you may not know about the atmosphere. It's not comprehensive, but it is a few things that I think are really interesting. Okay, you may remember that God made the atmosphere on day number 2, and if you were with us when when we went through Genesis chapter 1, you would find out. Okay, well, I asked this before. What would you create first, right? What would you make first? And some people would say, oh, I'd make a cat, or I'd make an eagle, or something, right? Usually it tends to be something living and cute, right? And or interesting, cool. And we always forget that they kind of need something to breathe. A bird needs a place to land eventually, it's just kind of like, well, okay, we're missing a few things there. So, luckily for us, God knew what He was doing. On day number 2, He created the atmosphere for us to breathe. Because He's like, hey, I got a plan in place. I know what I'm going to do. People are going to need to breathe. Animals are going to need to breathe. Plants are going to need their air as well. And so, He knew what He was doing. So, praise God for what His wisdom. Okay, let's get started with our first fact here. So, you heard Joe talk about the sky is blue during the day, and at night it's black, and you can see all the stars, right? They're all twinkly, right? So why is that? So it's because of a word called scattering. So let's take a look at this kind of clip here. You can see if you ever had rays of light coming through a window or something, typically in like the afternoon or morning, you see all the dust in the air you can see it, and you can swirl your hand through it. You can see how the air moves to dust, and you go, wow, I actually didn't realize how much dust was in the air, right? It's because the rays of light, normally you can't see them until they actually hit something. So that light is coming in, and as soon as it hits that piece of dust, it does what we call scatter. It goes, effectively blows up that light. So we now have light. We understand. So light comes in and it hits something, and it will scatter. It will keep going until it actually hits something. Now, there's enough air in the atmosphere. The light, there's so much light coming from the sun. I mean, it's unbelievable amount of light that thing generates. And all of that is hitting all that huge volume, miles and miles of air between us and space. And eventually, at some point, that light hits the air molecule and it'll scatter.
So what you see here is a graph showing how much light at different colors is scattered by the atmosphere. So it will scatter a lot more blue than it does green and orange and red. So what happens is when you mix all those colors together, you end up with that sky blue that we're all familiar with. Now if you take a look at an example here, where if the atmosphere scattered less blue and you mixed all those colors together, you get almost like a light peachy color.
What happens to the stars during the day? Well, they're still there. It's just overpowered by all that sunlight. When the sunlight, say there was no atmosphere, right? We had no atmosphere, so it wouldn't be. What would happen is there would not be any blue during the day because there's no atmosphere to scatter off of and scatter that blue light. So what would happen is you would just see straight through up into space. Just like when people go to the moon, they look up, there's no atmosphere, so what they would see is just space, even though the sun would be shining on the moon. So that's pretty much why. So it overwhelms the starlight. And so at night you can see the stars because your eyes adjust, but during the day it's like, wow, there's so much light from the sun and so much scattering of the blue that it just overpowers it. It's kind of like this. So with this analogy, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of water, right? So this is going to represent the star, right? The star that's going to be shining down during the day. And just remember, so you can still see the star at night, and technically all that light from the star is still coming through the day. It's just overwhelmed by the blue sky. So this is kind of like what it's like. Okay, so Joe, you ready? You can feel the water,
Yeah,
right?
and I can definitely feel it. That
Now, can you
star is,
distinguish
like,
it from
bright and stuff.
this?
Yep, I couldn't feel it. Nope, couldn't feel it anymore.
There you have it, folks. The star gets overwhelmed by the other light. Just in the same way that, sure, you could feel a little bit of water coming from this guy, but then as soon as there's a huge rush of water, like from a cup, just thrown in your face, you lose it, right? You can't tell that it's there anymore. You can't distinguish it anymore. So just in the same way, you can't distinguish that single star from the wash of light from the sky.
Hey, Brother Jason, I got my own analogy. I got my own illustration for this. See, okay, yeah, can you watch? Can close your eyes.
Okay, sure.
Can you feel this feather?
I can feel the one feather. Yep, okay. How about all these feathers? Producer Joe and I have shaken hands, and we're good now. So, scientists put the atmosphere in what they call layers, okay? Different layers, all right? A number of different layers. So you're at ground level, and then there's another layer, and then another layer, and then another layer, okay? And each layer has its own unique properties, and there's something that's quite interesting that you may not realize about several of those layers. So let's get into it. First up, temperature. You may realize that as you get higher in altitude, it gets colder, right? Like if you're down at the beach, it's kind of warm because you got what they call sea level, right? And if you go below that, typically there's some deserts that are even below sea level. Like if you go 3 hours, we'll take it that way, east, There's the Imperial Valley. It's actually a low, below sea level desert. It gets very hot. But as you gain altitude, as you climb mountains, you see, there's snow on top of mountains. If you go up to Big Bear, it gets colder. That's why people go there in winter to ski, because there's snow. And there's not snow down here because we're closer to sea level. So that makes sense. We understand that. You go higher in altitude, it gets colder. Part of that is because as you get higher, the air gets thinner. If you've ever been really, really high in altitude, it's harder to breathe, right? And actually, if you're in an airplane, it's so thin that you can actually pass out because there's not enough oxygen. So the air is so thin up there. All right. So that's why one of the reasons why it gets colder. There's not enough. It just can't retain the heat. So that's just the first layer, which is called troposphere. Troposphere. Now, you may be thinking, okay, well, if I go up to the next layer, the stratosphere, it is even colder, right? No, you'd be wrong, because actually it makes a U-turn and gets warmer. And actually, it does a few times. It does this a few times. It will get colder, and then hotter, and then colder, and then really, really hot. So why is all this happening? So here, let's give you here's all the layers, all of them together. So we talked about the troposphere and then the stratosphere. So here's the thing. Why are there different layers, and why do they each have their own unique characteristic? Well, if you ever had things like orange juice separate, right? If you ever had any type of juice, beverage, or anything like that that actually has different layers, like it separates out, you'll have like the solids at the bottom, and then some liquid and some different color liquid. Have you ever seen that? That's basically what's happening here. You have things that are heavy going lower. You have things that are lighter going higher, so the atmosphere is not made of all things that are the same, right? So it's made of different things, different chemicals, and each one of those chemicals has a different property. Like, it will be less dense, so it goes higher. It basically weighs less, it goes higher. And the air that we breathe is the heaviest, so it's actually lowest. So that's pretty much why they are separated into different layers, and they all have their own unique properties. Now, if you've been in the plane, you might have actually been in the stratosphere. So typically there's a lot less air, and there's a lot less turbulence. So what aircraft will do is they will fly up and hit that lower part of the stratosphere. So you've been in an aircraft, a commercial aircraft, flying over the country or something. You've probably been in the stratosphere. So good, congratulations. And this is where we have ozone. That ozone, that's a different chemical than what we breathe. So you wouldn't really be breathing that. We breathe 2 atoms of oxygen combined together. This is 3 atoms of oxygen combined together. So it's less dense, so it's lighter, so it goes a little bit higher than the air that we normally breathe. Our air is not fully oxygen. It also contains nitrogen mostly, and some other chemicals. But this ozone layer goes a little bit higher because it weighs less, so it'll sit above what we breathe. So now that we're up to what we call the mesosphere. So you have the troposphere, which is about 5 to 9 miles thick, depending on where you are. Thinnest at the poles. Then you have, that's where all the weather occurs, and you have the stratosphere, which is where the ozone sits, and that's protects us from ultraviolet, and that's about 22 miles thick. So now if you're at where we are, just say 9 miles, so you're at 31 miles above the Earth's surface, and then you have now the mesosphere. Now this is where it gets colder still. So remember, the troposphere, it was getting colder as you went up, and then got warmer in the stratosphere because of all the absorption of all the ultraviolet light. Now it gets even colder. This is the coldest layer. It's 22 miles thick itself. Also, it's just like the stratosphere, and it gets like down to negative 85 degrees Celsius, which the only way I can describe it is, yeah, super, super, super cold, right? So it gets really, really cold. In fact, I kind of said all the clouds are in the troposphere, and that's where all the weather occurs. But there are ice clouds up in the mesosphere because that's where it's the coldest. And there's certain conditions you can actually see those particular clouds, and they're the highest clouds. And so the other thing that's interesting about the mesosphere is it's really our line of defense against meteors. So those meteors that if you ever seen a shooting star, it's because it's burning up in the mesosphere. Now the layers above the mesosphere are so thin, the molecules are so spread out that a lot of times the meteors will just pass right through them. But once it hits the mesosphere, it becomes thick enough that actually the friction, the meteors are going so fast that the friction of the air causes heat. Just like if you were to rub your hand on the carpet, which I don't recommend. Like don't rub your forehead or hand or knees on the carpet. But if you did, or if you had like sandpaper or something and you rubbed it really, really fast, it would get warm, and that's called friction. And the air can actually have friction to it. There's some, if you pass through it fast enough, you will get friction and you'll get heat. And so what happens is it hits that mesosphere, and all of a sudden it hits that thickness of the air there, and the friction will start to heat it up, and it will just burn up in that mesosphere. So without that, then the meteors would just come right through and then just keep plopping down all over the place. So as long as they're small enough, they will just burn up in the mesosphere. Next, we have what we call the thermosphere. Now, that's where that temperature takes another U-turn, and contrary, again, we started out going, well, yeah, if you go higher, you get colder, right? We've already found out that in the stratosphere, it gets warmer. But here in the thermosphere, it actually gets hotter. It's the hottest layer. So meso, which means middle, is kind of like stuck in the middle between this thermosphere and everything below it, right? So the stratosphere and the troposphere. So the thermosphere, it's yes, the hottest, but doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be burning up. And so let's talk about that. So first up is, it also is what's commonly known as the ionosphere, primarily because it's our first line of defense against what the sun is shooting at us. The sun, not just visible light, but it also, as we talked about, ultraviolet stuff we can't see, but is also high energy. This first layer will capture basically all the really high energy stuff from space and from the sun that we don't want here down on the Earth. So it will hit that atmosphere, that layer first, and break those molecules apart. And so what that means is once they're broken apart, they are charged. They have a charge in them. They're like electricity at that point. So basically that whole layer, a good portion of it, is full of charged particles. It's got electricity, if you will, up in that layer, and it's a blanket of electricity on the outer layer of our atmosphere. And in fact, this is actually where the International Space Station flies and sits. What you'll also see is it's home to what we call the Aurora Borealis, or Northern Lights. Why that is because under certain conditions, you'll be able to see those molecules, those atoms, or not atoms, but like molecules breaking apart. And that's because the way the sun hits them and the magnetic fields all come into play, you will start to see those charged particles get broken up and then actually emit different colors of light. And so that's why you see what they call the Aurora Borealis. Okay, so it's very hot, actually 4,500 degrees
Fahrenheit.
I mean, talking about super hot, melt metal type hot. Now, here's the thing. You think, man, if I get a long enough stick, I can put a marshmallow up there and toast it. It doesn't quite work that way. There's a lot of heat up there. That layer contains a lot of heat. but the ability, there's so little air molecules that actually it can't transfer that enough energy to you to get hot. So you won't collect a lot of that heat unless you're like collecting a lot of air. So you may need a big giant parachute to collect all the air to absorb any amount of heat from that air, because you're not touching it. There's not enough air touching you to get that heat to you. Now, the last layer is what they call the exosphere. Basically, it's pretty much space at that point. It does contain some helium and hydrogen, some atoms again, but they're very spread out and very, very, it's so thin, there's nothing to breathe. I mean, at this point, there is nothing left. And just a few pieces of gas, like hydrogen and helium, like things that you can't breathe anyways. And it's about 6,200 miles thick, so really it's as big as the Earth is around. It has think of another Earth on top of that doubles its size. That's really where the exosphere lives, and in essence, is really space, but it still has some air gas to it. Now, whether you're in the exosphere or you go beyond it to real space, it's very cold. And again, here's what's unique. I think you may not realize it, is it may be cold, but you can still be warm in it. So here's the thing. So say you go to the moon. There's no atmosphere. At that point, there's nothing to breathe. There's nothing, effectively no gas out there. Just consider it just empty space. Now, if you're on the side with the sun, here's the thing. That sun will beat down on you, on your spacesuit, and get you warm. You're effectively in a greenhouse at that point. And why? Because there's no way for that heat that's inside them to escape, right? Normally, the air around us will either make us hotter, like because it's a hot air, like if it feels like a blow dryer, it's going to make us warmer. If there's cold air, like you turn the air conditioning, or you're just in a place where it's really, really cold temperature, it's going to suck the heat out of you. Here, there's no air around that astronaut, and so there's nothing to suck the heat out. There's no air touching you. Effectively, you can burn up inside a spacesuit out in space where it's supposedly really cold. That's what's so unique about space there, is because you think, well, it's really cold, but no, it actually, you can burn up inside because you have no way for that heat to escape. So that's it for this week's creation of the week, God's creation of the week. The atmosphere. I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, God created on day number 2, and it's actually so much more unique and intricate and detailed than we ever imagined. Again, we would just say, oh, put a bunch of air up there. God knew what he was doing. He knew that his light that he was shining down on day number 2, his light was shining on the earth, that he would replace that with a sun, and that sun is going to have ultraviolet, and it's going to have other characteristics that he's got to say, well, I got to make the layers of this atmosphere such that they will protect them, that there's gives them something to look at. It gives you stars at night. It gives you blue skies during the day, beautiful rainbows. All those things happen because God designed it in such a way that it would be that way. It's amazing to think what God did on that day number 2, and all the things that he knew that we're going to have to play out, and what we would need. Look forward to be with you at some point in the future, and continue to pray for one another, read your Bible, just continue to stay faithful during this time. And I appreciate each one of you, and we'll be seeing you soon.